Delighted to be here for this talk by Kader Attia. Kader was born in France in 1970, but grew up between Algeria and the suburbs of Paris. Drawing from his experiences of living within two different cultures, he has developed a dynamic practice that examines the complexities of social, historical, and cultural differences, or otherness, across the globe, both local and also global. Kader has participated in numerous Biennale exhibitions as an artist, including the Sharjah Biennale 15, 2023, the Wenzhou Biennale and the Lyon Biennale, and the Documenta 13 in Kassel, where he had a seminal work and prize in 2012. He was awarded the Miro Prize in 2017, the Wan Young Prize in 2017, and the Marcel Duchamp Prize in 2016. He's also curator of the 12th Berlin Biennale in 2022, and is currently artist in residence at the Louvre in Paris to mark the museum's 230th anniversary. One of the highlights of Documenta 13 was Kader's installation, The Repair from the Occident. And Kader and I first spoke about working together when I was researching a project on Roger Casement. He was showing work at the Whitechapel at the time, and we began a conversation then, which continues today, and it's ongoing in the hope of developing the project. So maybe I introduce Kader Attia, please, and he will come on up, Kader. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. How to start? Yes. I mean, thanks a lot for this introduction, Michael. And it's indeed very important to recall that our dialogue have been lasting for more than almost 10 years now. And I think that this means a lot for me, not only to be here in Highland, in Dublin. I came, I think around, I don't remember when, but we were talking about this Biennale, Eva Biennale. I came first at that time, I think in 12, and I was like very, very fascinated, and I'm still, by the echoes I could find in this culture and my own cultural narrative as a descendant of not only Algerian. My grandmother was a fighter. She fought for the independence of France, of Algeria against France. And she was a strong woman, very strong. She had no husband, and she was, she did a lot for the Algerian resistance. But one of the things that I really found important, that I could find again by reading the way that the Irish culture and the way that this culture has been like deeply marked by colonialism. I would say that she elaborated. Let me tell you an incredible story. A couple of years ago, like 10 years ago, yeah, no, maybe more. I was speaking with my mother, and she discovered that I was collecting Berber jewels. She was very surprised. She said, how did you come with this object? I said, I don't know, I find them beautiful. She said, they are not in gold, they are in silver, they are very old stuff. I said, maybe that's why, but, and she told me, you know what? You know that your grandmother used to collect the jewels of old ladies who married in the probably 1910, 1920. And these jewels, necklace, earrings, foot bracelet that we called khalkhal, were gathered in a cave that is just behind our farm in Algeria. After months of collecting this, 3 months, the amount of these silver, very simple jewels were collected by the soldiers during the night of the Algerian resistance, and brought with using donkeys to Tunisia, so crossing the minefields that was the border between Algeria and Tunisia at that time, to melt them into silver stick and buy Kalashnikov for the resistance. So when she told me this, I was like, whoa, that is something I felt and even wrote about this without, definitely without any agenda. I'm still collecting this object because I like them. But then I start to look at these jewels. So you have to imagine these very classic, silver jewels, quite dark, because silver gets dark very soon. And on the face that appears to the public, the elements are decorated with what we call in Algerian and Arab marjoun, which is red coral. In Algeria, in one region of Algeria, you have a lot of red coral. So the front is decorated, and when you flip the object, you discover that these circles are actually a representation of European rulers because they are coins. So you have the face of Napoleon, you have the face of the Queen Victoria, you have the face of the King of Spain. And for me, it was like, and it's still clearly what I felt and I call a sign of reappropriation, an early sign of resistance. While these people were, these craftsmen, craftswomen were fabricating this very simple object, with their hands, which value was also, particularly they were offered during at the wedding occasion. The fact that the face of these European rulers, of these imperialist rulers, were on the back of the jewels and therefore hidden from the public sphere, for me was definitely the beginning of what would end as a revolution 100 years after. And that processes of reappropriation, for me, reappropriation because we talk here about dispossession, like Achille Mbembe told me once. He said there is a reappropriation because there has been a dispossession. The dispossession is the dispossession from the perspective, from the position from which you can understand the world and therefore imagine something else. And for me, this example means a lot because as an artist, I'm not a politician. I've been running spaces and projects with activists, but I always found in poetry, in the simplicity of poetry, the ground for elaboration of traces that will be shared slowly within an individuation process. Not, again, individuals are names. Individuation is the verb of being individual. These processes makes what we are. We share traces. And for me, this moment, this example I'm giving to you explains very much how much I always think that the strength and the beauty of art is that even if you're interested by addressing political matters in the world we are living in, right now, for instance, it is extremely important to be able to go back and forth between two things. The first one between poetry and politics, and the second one between theory and practice. This is what I'm trying to teach also to my students. When you get depressed in front of a white sheet, in front of a white canvas, and you feel, oh my God, I'm not inspired, stop. Go read, go to the cinema, step aside from your practice and listen and read. And when the theory for you it's too much blah blah, you're not satisfied, you find it not new at all, go back to the tangible experience of creating, to the matter, sculpt wood, clay, use your body as a medium. Edit films like by not thinking, you just take all the footage randomly and you leave them a week and you come back a week after, or maybe 3 weeks after, and you look at it. So I think this idea of going back and forth between theory and praxis, because I think that the limit of theory start where the praxis is needed, and vice versa. The limits of practice start where the theory is needed, where the thinking is important. So we could speak, and we will speak later with my dear friend Michael, but at the moment I'm very, very happy to share with you this new film that I just finished a couple of, I would say, not even 2 months, or maybe 2 months ago, which is, as you will understand in the film, very important and at some point, very personal film. There are in this film 3 characters, one is my mother, and 2 others are friends with whom we share a lot of what we just spoke now. So maybe we can start by the projection of the film.
Par hasard de cette valise.
Et le nom, en fait, du propriétaire de la valise, tu l'as appris 70 ans après ou 60 ans après, en fait?
C'est ça. En regardant de façon très rapide les livres de contes, j'ai compris qu'il était un personnage très important dans l'organisation du MNA.
Libéré, moulé, merhaba,
Ouais.
merbah.
C'est-à-dire lui.
C'est-à-dire lui.
C'est ça. Ce monsieur, ce camarade, avec son garde du corps, je les ai hébergés et je ne savais pas son nom. Dans la clandestinité, on n'a pas à savoir à qui on a affaire. Je les ai hébergés et voilà. Et un jour, ils m'ont demandé s'ils pouvaient laisser quelque chose. J'ai dit oui, pas de problème. Et on avait tout un système coups de téléphone pour savoir si tout allait bien. Et un jour, ils ne sont pas revenus. Et alors, ils ont laissé la valise. Je n'ai évidemment pas ouvert la valise, parce que je ne m'en sentais pas le droit. Et j'ai simplement gardé précieusement cette valise pendant 60 ans. Et c'est ma compagne Danielle qui, ne connaissant pas toute cette histoire, l'a ouverte et a découvert ce qu'il y avait dedans. Moi, je gardais la valise précieusement en me disant peut-être qu'un jour, ne sachant pas de qui j'avais hébergé, je ne pouvais pas me douter de quoi que ce soit. Je savais que c'était des révolutionnaires algériens. Point barre.
Et Jacques disait plus tard que quand il a défendu ces femmes, et notamment Djamila, si vraiment elles avaient été mises à mort, il ne sait pas ce qu'il aurait fait. Il disait que là, quand il le disait, il était au bord des larmes. On sentait que pour lui, c'était pas possible. À une époque où, comme tu le sais, beaucoup d'Algériens ont été envoyés à la guillotine, notamment par le garde des Sceaux de l'époque, François Mitterrand. C'est des jeunes femmes qui se sont engagées, quoi. Djamila, elle disait, c'était son pays. Djamila, elle est algérienne. Elle est algérienne. Pour elle, il n'y a pas de question de se dire je ne suis pas vraiment, je dois quelque chose à la colonisation. Non, c'est son pays. C'est son pays, et son pays a le droit d'être libre. Il n'y a pas d'hésitation.
قاعدة comme ça حتى تفكرت سي فغي الطبيب عنده الحق تو الشيء اللي صرا لي كنت صغيرة دركا سي ان فيلم نقول لك عليه كيما كوماسيت حتى لدرك اللي تي تري دور خالي ما سامحهاش لا هي وخالي راهم في جهنم يتحرقوا
هاي ما حكي لي هذه علاش
ما قراتنيش هذه خالتي هذه خالتي وي ما سامحهاش
ليه خالك
خالي كان يضربني
ما خليكش تقول تروحي
ليكول ما دارني كومين كوزات كروات بويض يحكمهم يديروا البنتورة لا بنتور لويل باش ما نشوفش برا كي سباس
من بعد كيف درتي؟
انايا نبرش هكا بيدي باش نطلع هاوي نطلع نشوف العباد كان مارشي كبير قدامنا مارشي كبير تفرج شوف الناس نهار يفيق بالكارون كوماسا شويه يكبر يعطيني طريحه ويعاود البندوره عاوي
بعد زيدي
ابخي نزيد نعاود نزيد نبدل الكارو اخر ونزيد باش نتفرج برا. باسكو قاعده في الدار غالقين عليا. مرتو تروح عند سافامي وانا مسكينه قاعده. كوزات
وحدك
وحدي برك.
وحدك ولا مع الولاد؟
الولاد كانوا تما ولا كانوا في الجامعه هم في الجامع. ابخي كبروا. انا برات ما نروحش نجيبهم. سي انتردي دار لي العجار.
كيما حبست؟
11 دار لي العجار. 11 11 ما ننساش. 11 دار لي العجار ودار لي الملايه.
علاش؟ كان اغيري هو؟
غاف. Mais méchant, elle est méchant. C'était la méchanceté quand même. أنا صغيرة 11 ans. C'est quoi 11 ans? Mais pour ça ما قلت والو. mais على القراية ما نسامحوش. ما نسامحو لا في الدنيا لا في الآخرة. وراهو في جهنم ومازال. حتى دفن إخلاص شي با كيفاش نقول لك. نو هو وخالتي هذه جزية. هذه وسي. داك الخلا ان شاء الله. لو كان هي قالت له خوها لو كان عينها خالتي هادي حطها موني وسيف ليك تقرا. علاه ما تقراش طفيله يتيمه؟ نو.
Well, Kader, I don't know where to start after that, but thank you very much for sharing.
Welcome.
It's a very, very intimate piece of work, in that you expose a lot of your vulnerabilities as a person, and maybe that's where we could start actually, as an artist, how you have to delve into that, and how we share traces, because actually I'm reminded the similarities between a lot of Irish culture and Algerian culture, the same sort of forces at play that disconnected a lot of us in regards our identity and where we stand. Or certainly last night I was at a removal of a funeral of a distant relation of mine, which takes me back sort of 3 generations. And it reminds me, I mean, some of the families and the stories that go back 3 generations in my family were connected with the Land League and how important that was in forming groups in the community to I suppose, organise against a colonial repression. And that's why it's so similar with the Algerian history and story with France. And so how we use something that's local and then it goes global, and that we can both talk to each other and both relate to the emotion and to the search for identity in our work. And maybe that's something we can explore tonight. Or do you want to comment really about what the work is or how it came about in its making?
For me, it was important to do this work because there is a quote at the beginning that says sometimes the great history echoes or meet into micro stories, and I think history is made with micro stories. Because there are so many, we at some point we do not expect there is a kind of sort of not irrationality but something that is unpredictable with history because it's due to micro stories. Before and after and beyond political narrative, there are people. Like the lawyer Jacques Vergès, as far as I'm concerned, I have grown up with the figure of this lawyer. I mean, as a hero, you know, he was like the hero of the Algerian war because he was the lawyer of the liberation movement. But then you have this ambivalence that he has abandoned his wife, Jamila, with 2 kids. And there is something that I found important also, particularly as an artist, when we talk about histories, that you can reveal the ambivalence of humans, that maybe bring us closer to the reality and to the truth, rather than staying mesmerized by the representation of the hero, which is for me a figure that, again, as we see in the film, it's like the monster and the hero are not always on the side that we think. And I think it's part of, it's giving them humanity to show that, side that history and the narrative, the heroic narrative is hiding. And it's very personal, because for me, it helps me to get deeper in the intimacy of life and of the events that probably help me to be more sort of open to listen when I'm interested, when I'm trying to understand the complexity of the politics, and particularly nowadays. I think it's important to be able to not or to keep a kind of free will that helps you to keep a certain distance with the topic. And that's why I did this film. I think for me it was important to, of course there are many other things, but for me this idea of from the micro stories addressing the question of colonialism was to show the ambivalence of humans.
It's interesting that you bring up the idea of free will, because I think that's what's at stake today. If you look at the colonized and how it represses your identity, how it represses your individuality, and to make you all, label everybody with sort of the same, compartmentalized into the same sort of box. But why I think that's at stake today is connection with part of our conversations we talked about is through the new, I suppose, the new alliance of tech bros and how social media has captured our free will. It's a new territory that's beginning to be unveiled as we speak. So historically we had Europeans going to the New World. It was unregulated. It was you could be exploited, and that's what capitalism does. And it sort of exploits it and moves on to the next thing. But now we're in an era of the territory of the mind, or the territory of free will, and that's connected with each and every one of us using our phones, and how learning machines begin to capture our data and therefore predict our behavior, and they're getting better and better at it. And this is kind of a new form of colonialism that's happening, of course, that we need to be aware of, I guess. And I don't know how, when I look at those heroes as Jack, how you can resist. You become a resistor to that, and everybody forms their own path to it.
Yeah, of course.
And an artist is one of the paths.
Also, the reason I also position the character of the film in their ambivalent way is also because I think that the public, the audience, in front of any artwork, is also completed the artwork, in the sense that each one will identify in the narrative or in the character or the way he or she or they want. And I think for me it's very important to maintain, and that this is what we can connect with the free will also. The free will at some point, it's an agency. But there is something I would like to before we go into digital, as you know, it's also part of my researches. I definitely think that to understand how much the algorithmic governance is the new colonialism, we need to constantly keep the audience or to update, let's say, the audience with a genealogy of what is colonialism. Because there is a genealogy of colonialism, there is an history of colonialism.
Yeah, and once you look back at it, you see the pattern of it. So once your eyes are open to it, it's very easy. And maybe that's the role of the artist, curator, and institutions to bring that out.
Also because probably one of the most perverse sort of strength of colonialism is the narrative. Like there was this French historian, Paul Ricoeur, who says, it is the winner who writes history, the history.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if we do not hold that narrative, or hold that gates, like in the end, Jean-Jacques Lebel with this suitcase, Françoise Vergès saying that, because Françoise Vergès, I don't know if you know her, but she's a very, very important figure of feminism. And the fact that she's also saying in the film that she understands that Jacques disappeared from friends, Algerian feminists that are very close, it's concerning because they see a man, abandoning a woman with 2 kids in a time where Algeria was completely bankrupt. It was that's the reason my father left to France and then he came back. He could not stand to stay in France, but my mother wanted to stay. So what I found important here is that by revealing the whole aspect of a human aspect of the characters here, the fact that the uncle of my mother abused her while she was an orphan, I mean, depicting that the monster here is not only the French, the French subject. I think I'm showing also how the normalization of colonialism now, today, is hiding all its own agency for violence, because colonialism, of course, is definitely a weapon of capitalism, and within this, of patriarchy. And the way that the pressure of colonialism that we feel today, that we is completely normalized. Like you hear stuff today that are like you feel in the 19th century, like if nothing happened in the media. Can be only fought with, I would say, strategies that could be artworks, could be, of course, places like when I created this place with friends in Paris, La Colonie, places to deliberative places where we talk, where we try to like...
Could you just explain a little bit more about the La Colonie in Paris?
La Colonie was a space in Paris that we created with a group of friends, and it was La Colonie with this strip, so La Colonie, you do not include me in. And it has been a place where we try to address inside Paris in a time where it was more difficult than, let's say, after what we did, I have to acknowledge, to hold the team, to speak particularly about the link between, again, colonialism, capitalism, and hold the blind spot of modernity that have been normalized as form of oppression, so patriarchy. We had a lot of, we met, I knew Françoise for many years, but we met at La Colonie, Wassila Tamzali, Karima Lazali, many people, but also we were not only focused on, of course, on Algeria, even though it's a very important topic, but also on the whole, let's say, continuation of what has been elaborated in the colonial laboratory on racialized subjects such as police violence against. I don't know if you heard about the story of Théo Louakas, who is a Franco-Congolese young guy who was back home one day after the soccer football, and he has been arrested by the police, beaten as hell, and insanely raped by the police with this truncheon, and went to the hospital, of course. So at that time, we were approached by activists to organize a counter-narrative because the media were transforming this aggression as a kind of aggression from the young against the police. So La Colonie became a place where activists who could, particularly racialized activists who could not, find a way to exchange together, to in a kind of very interesting reciprocity. Elaborate strategies to struggle and to resist against this kind of normalization of racism and violence. But again, what I really want to say here to finish, because it's very important, is that the complexity of colonialism is that you have to constantly update your understanding of the contemporary mutation of colonialism by maintaining not only a thread with the history and this blind spot of modernity through different narratives, artworks, books, essays, meetings, etc. But also I think it's very important to elaborate, and here I'm joining you, Michael, an understanding that, like Jean-Jacques Level is saying in the film, the revolution is still on. I think colonialism is not over. It sounds banal today, but when I was saying this in France in 2008, 2009, they were like, "Oh, come on, those countries have got their independence." Speak about something else. You remember that?
Yeah.
So, to understand how much the new colonialism or the mutation of colonialism today is much more complex, much more psychic, much more turned into our capacity to have free will, and therefore it weakens us to be able to elaborate strategy to counter colonialism. I'm speaking here about social media. I'm speaking here about all this kind of techno-liberalism that is constantly acting on our mind, on our unconsciousness, but also consciousness through tools that are invisible, basically, stimuli that,
Yeah, at least in the old days, you could see it coming. You can't see it today.
No, but we have to work on it now, because then we will see it and it will be too late.
This is the fallacies of hope.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, it's like how to resist today is really is a task, and what we have to every one of us do it, not knowing what's ahead. And maybe this analogy with the creative act is where it becomes important. When you talk about theory, everybody reads theory all the time, and you get bogged down in it, and you need to go back to that blank space, that blank canvas, whatever, to begin, because you don't know. You have to how can I say, the rational mind is now being so polluted today that you need to allow the subconscious to come back up. For this, for reparation, for repair, and maybe repair is something that which is evident, very much central to your work, is that concept. I don't know, is it come from the African continent, to have how objects are repaired and reappropriated to become, they take ownership of it, the object, and maybe you'll sort of elaborate on that in your work.
It's the repair has indeed, Michael. I started to think about it almost 20 years ago. Fascinated me as soon as I saw with my very eyes that not only Africa, by the way, it has changed. At the beginning, I was living in Congo 4 years, so I saw it in Africa, but then I've been traveling in different places of the world, in Asia, in Southeast Asia, etc., and also in the West. Pre-modern society, when they were fixing objects, calabashes in Africa, or ceramic bowl in Japan, or anything here, when an object was broken, they used to fix it by leaving visible the process of the repair. So staples in Africa, for instance, or strings on calabashes. This, you all know, the kintsugi ceramic bowl, which cracks have painted in gold. So the kintsugi art is when you receive during this tea ceremony a cup of tea with a crack, actually you have to, so the crack is always oriented towards you, and to acknowledge the honor that your host is giving you, you cannot drink directly. You have to turn the object like this, in silence, showing to him or to there or to her that in silence you acknowledge this honor that she's giving you, and then you drink the tea. So the injury of the broken object has here an incredible meaning of social links and but what fascinated me, I have to say, again back into this modern or the critique of modernity rather than, I have to admit, coloniality or colonialism, was this obsession that the modern mind has to erase the injury, the wound. I went to study a little bit the origin of this European word, repair. So in German, it's almost the same as Reparaturen. In Spanish, reparation. In French, réparer. So it comes from the Latin word reparare. The reparare means to return at the original state. So what modern mind pretend in these whole centuries of conceptualizing the repair as an act is to be able to return to the state before the accident, to the state before the wound, to be able to control time, and therefore, by metaphor, the narrative of it. And that's why, for me, modernity, I would say modern/colonial. Modernity and colonialism are linked together. They have, in colonized areas, the repair was still caring about the time of the object. When an object was fixed, it has always kept the trace of the injury. If probably ethically, but also it became aesthetically, which is fascinating. In Congo, I have seen incredible calabash with very complex, sophisticated, exquisite systems of knots that makes the repair not only, a new life for the object that was supposed to be thrown away, but also a ground for decoration, a ground for an artistic expression. And this really deeply touched me. Like when I was, but again, in 2007, when I was asking to museums, I sent many letters to Museum of Ethnography at that time to ask whether they had in their collection repaired objects that have been repaired in genuinely, so in the original village where they come from. No one answered. One answered was from the Smithsonian African Art Museum. They said, no, we don't have such things. We repair ourselves the broken object. I was answering immediately, but then they are not original. Yeah. If you, conservator, are fixing the repair, are you fixing the repair also, Actually, I brought them in a mise en abîme. But for me, why your question is important is how you link the repair and this film.
This is it. On the film.
Yeah, because then there is, I think underneath.
Because in the object I see, in the object is contained past, present, and future.
Exactly, and also what we spoke before, Michael. As I told you, I'm fascinated by this back and forth between rationality and non-rational, theory and practice, and I think there is something, particularly that you feel when you create with your hands, like sculpting heads, sculpting objects, which I do a lot. Is the way that. But editing a film is also the same. There is a significant pain in dragging out of the nothingness an artwork. The artwork resists you. It resists you, it doesn't want to exist. It doesn't want to be part of the shitty world we are living in. We cannot agree more. So you drag this, and then it's not working when you sculpt with your axe or shit. With time, I've learned to leave the artwork or this energy, this abstract force, to express itself. When I do a mistake, I leave it, particularly with sculpture or collages also. I do this with collage. I tried many things, and I leave the desk full of paper object for, I don't know, I go to a dinner, I come back drunk at 2 a.m., I look at it at the studio, and then I leave the studio and I come back a week after. But sometimes, when you look at what is supposed to be a mistake, you feel that there is something that is not that bad. And then you start to say, okay, there is something, I don't know what is it. I'm not talking about God, this is, I have made peace with myself about that. But a force in a metaphysic way that has an agency, definitely. And it's very, sometimes you're very lucky, but it's not always, because all the mistakes are not extraordinary, obviously, it would have been too easy. But sometimes, like I really love this German artist Anna Höck, who did this collage, because in front of some collage also you have two pieces of paper that suddenly you see them like during the night, again at 2 a.m. you think, wow, this is extraordinary, but I'm going to sleep on it because maybe I'm drunk. And then you come back a week after, you say, no, it's good. So who did this? It's not you. It's something else.
It's not you?
It's not you.
It's not the material?
I think it's what I would call the contingency.
Yeah.
There is a part of contingency that basically saves us as human.
Yeah.
Because
and as an artist, you learn to trust yourself, to look at that mistake.
It's a conversation. It is a conversation. It cannot be passive. And that's why the Reaper, for me, has this very mystery force, strength, that sometimes someone was supposed to fix something like this chair, if the chair would be broken, and you look at it, you found something poetical, something emotional, something that is definitely very close to become an artwork. And this fascinates me.
Yeah, me too. Would anybody like to ask Kader a question? Or will we just keep going? Nobody there? Okay. I remember, I think in college there was a quote, a Picasso, who has a great facility of drawing, could draw like Raphael when he was 14. Took him a whole lifetime to draw as a child. But when he was established as an artist, and he would produce one of his many paintings. It's all working great, or a part of it is working great, but it's not complete. It's this sort of incompleteness that's hasn't arrived at, and so he would develop many different techniques. And I think the artist in the studio does this. You come back at 2 a.m. or you come in the next morning. You wait. One of the techniques is, if it's working and just partly working, you eliminate that. You eliminate, get rid of that part of the artwork, because that's the one that your ego is flattered by. It's the one that you're comfortable with. And to get back to the mistake,
interesting.
So to get back to the mistake, it's the one that you are uncomfortable with, because it's new. It's talking to you in a different way. So this is just an anecdote on the act of creation, I suppose. Luke.
I'm just thinking of the suitcase as a metaphor, or a sign of the tragedy in a way that you can't go home again. The suitcase, even though it's a repository, it's an archive, and it's a memory container. But the tragedy of the suitcase is that it's displaced.
That's true.
It's dispossessed. It's on the move.
Yeah.
And you can't go home again.
Maybe as
So the suitcase is a very kind of potent metaphor for the migrant.
It is. And the migrant who is assimilated into a new country.
Yeah, the dream that has found a home.
Can't find his way home. Because you've assimilated, you've changed, and the country you go back to, that you wish to return to, is no longer the same country. So that suitcase metaphor is a wonderful sort of sense of, well, you have the memories of the country that you have departed from, you've assimilated into a new country, and yet you don't belong because you're not accepted, you'll always be an outsider, so to speak. So this kind of state of being an outsider is very real, and maybe you've explored it.
I agree, and it's very interesting. But just to, there's a friend, Algerian psychoanalyst. Her name is Karima Lazali, and Karima told me that the suitcase is also the unconsciousness of the person. We have a lot of words. I don't know in English, but in French you have a lot of adjective words using suitcase. Has you trauma? As you, these, when we said about someone il a des valises, it might really refer to a heavy trauma he or she is dealing with. And that's why for me the object indeed has this kind of, is a loaded object anyway, in which the viewers can identify, and our unconsciousness and consciousness too can identify.
Yeah, I was going to add a question really.
Yep.
There was a reference to the suitcase carriers.
Yeah.
And that was another element, wasn't it? Sort of
Yes.
like, was that a sort of clandestine
It was a network.
carrying of, but they were literally called that.
Yeah, porteur de valise. Yeah, it was a network of resistance during the Algerian war for its independence, and they were one of the most famous network was called le réseau Janson. Réseau is network. Janson was the name of the, and indeed, was what Jean-Jacques explained is that. Because as an Algerian, having a suitcase in a station, you would have been arrested and probably killed. So it was very, they were hated. This is what he says in the film. They were hated by the right and particularly the far right, because the far right was, I don't know if you know, but the French far right reborn within the Algerian war. Something we forgot is that the French far right was collaborating with the Nazi during the occupation. So after the liberation, they were like, no one wanted talking with them. Their renaissance was during the Algerian war. That's why they tried to make a coup in Algiers with this OAS, the Organization of Secret Army, perpetrated by four general, and then General de Gaulle says, no, this is enough. But they wanted to build a fascist state in Algeria. And I think that's why I'm always like, I think it's important also to maintain this, what we do, because it's incredible how much time, vanished or normalized, and I would say polish also, the history. So the network Janson, the porteur de valise, so carrier of suitcase, was indeed significant. Yeah.
I'll take any more questions?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out that the valise, is used as a burden, a carrier. In English, we say that person has a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
But that's the same. That's the same, and no, that's definitely the same. But I like very much his remark, because I think I'm also, it was before the film, but I think I've always been fascinated by suitcases. I think these objects are kind of, strangely half object, half human. When you look at some old luggage, suitcases, you would really, you would die to hear these objects speaking. And I think there is a kind of metaphysic of the everyday life where objects are, loading the energy of the gazes and the use of all the people who have been interacting with them. We will pass, we will leave this world, but the object will be here, will stay. And that's why I think these old suitcases are very important. And I don't know if you remember in the film, Jean-Jacques is saying that he wanted also the suitcase, not only the content, which was also weird because the most important is what is inside. But I found this kind of point interesting.
Is that why we need museums?
Yes. And
sorry, Christine.
Field question. I mean, just in a parallel way, do you think that anything you've been talking about is kind of somehow underlying maybe to how Marcel Duchamp considered his what on believes and what it represented, which he assembled during the years of the Second World War. But I just wonder, is that a certain kind of maybe nostalgia, but also portrait or something that was also going to represent him in the future?
Yeah, Jean-Jacques would have loved this question because his father wrote the first biography of Marcel Duchamp. The father of Lebel was very close to Duchamp. He was a collector, and he has so many, so documents and photos of Duchamp. But I love what you said because I think the suitcase is also this. It can be also an exhibition space that you open and then you have these artworks. It's this kind of organic plasticity of this object is fascinating. And that's really, for me, important because, again, we're back into this idea that I'm constantly back and forth, between poetry and there's a beautiful poem by Lahabi, a Moroccan poet, about a migrant. And he's describing, the title could be translated like "Endlessly I Migrate." And you have this image of a migrant who from cities to cities just moving with his suitcase. And he says, there is a beautiful quote in the whole poem, "In each coffee, I drink the same coffee." Yeah, beautiful.
Okay. Well, Kader,
thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.